Oh, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? So, well, welcome in. Yes, awesome. Thank you. Welcome into the Path Forward Summit Community IRL. My name is Samantha Seahid. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program manager here at LGBT Tech. We're very excited to host all of you and have you come into these conversations with all of our speakers today. As you all know, we are currently in a digital world and it's not really separate from our everyday life. How we connect, we share, and protect ourselves online has real world impact. Access to technology and digital skills shape opportunity, career pathways, and personal safety, yet rapidly changing will make it difficult for us to keep up. So for LGBTQ plus individuals, these challenges are even more critical as online spaces can affect safety, visibility, and access to opportunity, while issues like harassment, privacy risks, and barriers to participation persist. Advancing DEI in STEAM and the workforce is essential to creating safer, more inclusive digital spaces for all, both online and in our communities IRL. So, before we jump into today's events and today's session, I will give a couple notes. First is we want to remind everyone in the lobby to click the join button right below my screen here or next to the session description. So you can go into the session buttons and you can see all the sessions and there should be a button that says join. This will allow you to also chat with other participants in the session and also use the Q&A function to submit your questions to our speakers. As well, we also want to tell you all to check out our expo area during the event and for an hour after the event concludes to learn more about the amazing work our exhibitors are doing. So we have a few exhibitors here today. They have resources, videos, and more information about what they're doing, as well as resources from LGBT Tech, including our guidebook that's newly released, our resource hub, our podcast, and also our most recent report, Control Alt LGBT, which you will be hearing about later today as well. So, let's get started with today's session. So, we're going to start with session one, which is 10 tips for cyber resilience for LGBTQ plus organizations. This will be led by our Director of Programs, Kristen Kelly, and our Executive Director, Christopher Wood. So, if you both could join me here, I will leave the floor to both of you. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks so
I
much
will
for
let
being
you all
here.
go.
Amazing. All right. So my name is Kristen Kelly. I am the Director of Programs for LGBT Tech. My pronouns are she and they, and I am so excited to be here with you all today.
Hello, and I'm Christopher Wood. I'm the executive director and co-founder of LGBT Tech. My pronouns are he, him, and I am so excited to have all of you from all over the world and all over the country here with us today.
And today we'll be talking about 10 tips for cyber resilience for LGBTQ organizations. So as Samantha mentioned, we'll be sharing some tips from our newly released guidebook. So a little bit about LGBT Tech, I'll hand it over to Chris.
So LGBT Tech was founded almost 15 years ago, really looking at the intersection of the LGBTQ community and technology. And some of you may know that in many places we're not counted. Around technology was one of the areas that we were not counted at all. We didn't have representation at some of the largest tables or the most important tables around technology. And technology spans from the way we get online to the way we communicate to the hardware we use, the software we use, and all the platforms we use. These have been vital spaces for us as a community, especially those who may not be in major cities or may not have community in the physical world. So LGBT Tech was really born with that idea and ensuring that there was an LGBTQ voice at the table. And we're a think tank with a programmatic arm. So we're conducting research, as you heard Samantha mention. We're testing technology as experiential experts. We're conducting policy work around the United States at the federal, state, and local level, as well as globally, in weighing in conversations with the research that we're conducting. And we've also rolled out several programs and continue to serve the community. But for that, I'll turn it over to Kristen to talk more about the programs.
So many of you are familiar with our Power On program, which is our oldest program at LGBT Tech. We're actually celebrating about 10 years of Power On this year, which is really exciting. And through Power On, we're working to bridge the digital divide for the LGBTQ plus community by dividing direct access to the technology that our community needs, not only to survive, but also to thrive. So our Power On program currently has two grant offerings. We have our Community Tech Grant, which is a grant that provides technology to LGBTQ serving organizations. We've provided laptops, cell phones, desktops, tablets, and printers to organizations to empower them to serve the community, whether that's through building computer labs in their spaces or other types of public tech access spaces, or to run their operations, to do outreach in the community. We've seen so many reasons why folks have used this technology to be able to serve the community. And we also have our individual tech grant. So our individual tech grant provides devices directly to community members. We provide laptops, cell phones, and tablets directly to the community so that they can use it for a wide variety of purposes, whether that be accessing mental health services, connecting with their caseworkers at their LGBTQ center, participating in their educational programs, job searching, housing searching. The list goes on and on. So we will be opening up Power On grants again in 2027, and we're really excited to share that. But when next year, and today we distributed over $750,000 worth of technology to the community over the past 10 years, serving over 788,000 LGBTQ individuals across 41 states and Puerto Rico. We're also very excited to share that with our Power On program, we have recently launched our Navigating Cyber Safety Guidebook. This is something that we maybe some of you have heard about for a little while from us, and we're so excited to share that it's finally here. We're able to share this with our community, but in all of our decade of working closely with LGBTQ individuals and LGBTQ centers, we've kind of had the opportunity to hear a lot about what are the tech needs from our community. And while we've done an amazing job at providing direct access to tech, we also acknowledge kind of the world that we're living in and some of the risks that our community face that is often, everyone who's interacting with technology has a lot of these questions around cyber safety, but there are some specific risks for our community and their experiences online. And so we launched this Cyber Safety Guidebook to kind of provide some guidance for LGBTQ organizations who are working with the community in some best practices that they can adopt within their centers as they're leveraging Power On Tech and other technology that they're using to serve clients. And so this guidebook goes through some kind of fundamental best practices around digital inclusion and access, cybersecurity fundamentals, organizational security and risk management, privacy, compliance, and data protection, policies, incident response and preparedness, building long-term cyber resilience, as well as some other topics. And so we're going to kind of dive into some of those topics here today. And I will turn it over to Chris to talk a little. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I will talk about cyber resilience. This training is called 10 Tips for Cyber Resilience for LGBTQ organizations. We wanted to start by defining what cyber resilience means. So cyber resilience is a holistic approach that includes an organization's ability to anticipate, withstand, recover from, and adapt to adverse events, stresses, attacks, or compromises of its cyber assets and spaces. Cyber resilience goes beyond just preventing or defending against threats and focus on maintaining operational continuity and minimizing damage in the face of cyber incidents. So we're going to dive into a little bit more of tangibly, what does that mean?
So cyber resilience and cybersecurity, although the tools and techniques used can fall into both categories, cybersecurity is really about the tools and the protections put in place. So focusing on, when you're talking about cybersecurity, you're focused on What protection tools are we using? How are we defending against real-time threats, things that are going to come at the organization at any point in time? We're looking at where there's potential holes and weaknesses and putting the tools in place, as well as the processes and policies in place in order to protect our data, our infrastructure, our community, our clients that we're serving. Whereas cyber resilience, as you just heard Kristen say, really looks at the holistic picture of how are we thinking about cybersecurity and cyber safety and our digital presence? How are we looking at maybe where we've had holes? Are we doing a continuous evaluation of our systems, both the back end and the front end? Are we seeing and looking at the ways that our community is interacting with us on social media? And do we have the appropriate protections in place there? Are we looking at how we're storing data and continuing to evaluate how we can do better based on standards? So cybersecurity, this is the way I kind of have said it before, is cybersecurity is going to get the degree from a university or complete your high school diploma. And cyber resilience is the continuing learning on a day in and day out basis of how to better secure and protect your organization. And so that's really the way that we look at it and recognize that one is all the tools and the things that you're putting in place maybe once or twice or upgrading. The other one is what are you doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? What are you doing on a yearly basis to review what's going on within your organization and your entire digital footprint?
So let's dive into some tips for cyber resilience. So as I mentioned, and as many of you know, many community tech grant recipients have used Power On technology to build out computer labs, cyber centers within their spaces in order to provide access to connectivity for the community within their LGBTQ organizations. So for those of you who do have computer labs in your centers, here are a few best practices for cyber safety in those computer labs. So our first tip is to secure shared computers. So what that can look like is limiting controls available to users. So for example, making sure that users cannot make administrative changes to these devices, which is something that you need to set up ahead of time before the public has access to the computer, that they're not going to be able to, for example, lock out your staff from being able to use it or changing passwords and things like that on the computer that would provide access into the device. Also utilizing tools such as assigned access. What this does is it lets you set up the computer like a kiosk. So it can only open one specific app or a few specific apps, turning the computer into a single purpose tool. So for example, if you have a computer in your center that you're using for folks to look for housing resources, for an example, you might be able to set up kind of the app or just the web page that you're directing folks to in order to browse, where they're not going to be able to be looking at other things if that's not the purpose of why you have the computer in the center. This setup is often used for public computers, like you might have found this in a library or a waiting room, and it's intended to securely access only that one resource or application or website. Another tip is to configure a restricted user experience. So this allows the user to still see the usual Windows desktop, but it limits their ability to access the applications or features, which minimizes the risk of data breaches or malware downloads. So just really making sure that you have those controls on so that folks are using the computers for their intended uses, whatever that might be. That might look really different for each center. But just making sure that you're able to kind of have some control there so folks aren't going in and downloading viruses onto your public computers and things like that. And then leveraging software to reset computers. So if you can get a software onto your computer where you're able to reset it to a default state automatically, that would clear out any downloads or changes made by each user. This can also protect your computers should somebody go in and kind of start messing with things and trying to change settings on the computers or lock out your staff or other folks. Or, for example, I'm sure many of us have had the experience where like something starts to download that all of a sudden everything freezes and it's like there's nothing you can do about it. So like that can give you access to go in the back end and stop those malware from downloading. Some examples of products like this would be Reboot, Restore, RX Proware software. Second, it's important to secure Wi-Fi for public access. So setting up a separate Wi-Fi network for staff devices and public use computers. Wi-Fi can be vulnerable, and so it's important to, if you're providing that public access in your center, that you know, you have the guest Wi-Fi network, and then you have the backend Wi-Fi network, that you're not sharing that staff Wi-Fi password with everybody who's coming into the center to use your computers. It's still important to utilize additional tools when doing this, such as installing strong antivirus software on each device to minimize cyber threats. But for some organizations, blocking potentially harmful malicious websites from your public devices can also help you secure the computer lab. Also choosing an ISP with good cybersecurity protections is important. So not all internet service providers are the same. A best practice would be to choose an ISP. ISP is an internet service provider that offers best-in-class security features such as built-in protections against malware, phishing, denial of service attacks, and to be cautious on relying on government-owned networks, tier 2 providers, or basic wireless-only services, which may lack the infrastructure or protections needed to keep your system safe. Also, when evaluating providers, ask specific questions about the security measures they use, such as firewalls, intrusion detection, and monitoring services, and confirm whether they offer separate networks for VLANs or virtual local area networks for guest access. And finally, this one might seem kind of obvious, but I think it's definitely important to think about is ensuring the physical safety of the devices, because I think we also see this all the time where, you know, folks are coming in and interacting with the technology. So, you know, things can get spilled, things can get broken. So just trying to kind of mitigate any risk of like physical damage to the devices. So some tips here would be to secure hardware and devices from theft or unnecessary damage. For example, require that devices be used in the center instead of renting them out. You know, if somebody rents out the tablet and they're on the bus and it gets pickpocketed, you don't really have control over that situation. So requiring clients to use this device in center is a way to mitigate damage to devices or theft. Also, for example, you could require sign in and sign out from the computer lab, just to kind of have an idea of who's coming in and out, as a way to make sure that you're able to track, you know, devices and everything. Also setting policies for closing the computer labs when it's vacant. So say, for example, you have a public use computer in your lobby and the front desk person is, you know, taking their break or something. Maybe they're locking the door to the access to the computer, just to be sure. And also, like when you're closing at night, not just leaving the doors open to the computer lab is a way to keep them protected. Prohibiting food and drinks in the lab. And it's also important to think about and to proactively minimize the risk that weather-related damage could cause to your devices. This is actually something that we've seen, unfortunately, increasingly in the past few years as you know, climate disasters and everything are more and more prominent in this country and everywhere. So thinking about what are the specific climate kind of threats in your area and what are ways to mitigate damage to your devices, especially when your devices are key to the services that you're providing. For example, you might want to avoid positioning devices near windows and keep the cords and hardware off the floor in case there's flooding, especially if you're in a flood-prone area, and having plans for weather-specific emergencies in your location. So, you know, obviously when there's weather incidents and things like that, a lot of the times they can be disruptive to services, but a way to mitigate that disruption would be to make sure that you're not losing access to the technology that you need to serve your clients in those instances. One tip is also that TechSoup is a service that offers discounted prices on security tools for nonprofits, such as security cameras and licenses. So I would definitely check them out.
What, just to add to that, because I don't think a lot of people think about it, maybe the executive directors of organizations do because they talk about it all the time, but ensuring that your devices are covered by your insurance is really important. A lot of times, organization, they get it, they're excited to have it, but they didn't actually update it with the insurance company, and a lot of times those insurance companies will replace it with a brand new device, which will be a newer device. So just keep that in mind as well. Um, so best practices for staff devices, or a few best practices here, a few more, is that another is to keep your devices and software updated. We all know this. We all get the updates on all of our devices, our personal devices, our computer device, or our work devices. And sometimes it's that annoying bubble that always pops up, and it's like, please update your device. Please update your device. The thing about those is that they have really important security patches, especially as these companies are continuing. They actually hire a whole host of what they call white hat hackers. Um, that look to exploit their systems. And so these security patches, or like these updates all the time, are those patches going into the software. And so it's really important that when those updates come through, that you are updating them, especially for not just the large centers, but the small centers too, actually even maybe more so, to make sure that you all are keeping everything secure, because you don't have the infrastructure necessarily of an entire IT team or a dedicated IT person. And so that's one really easy way that you can just make sure that you're protecting your staff's entire space, digital space. And also, a lot of times you can ensure automatic updates are on there. If you're using, I'll get into it a little bit more later, but if you're using systems where you're able to control all of the devices, even for remote devices, oftentimes you can have a setting in there that actually forces the update within a certain amount of time. Yes, again, annoying. You'll probably get complaints from your team, as I do constantly, about updated passwords and all of that. But it's really important. And as annoying as it is, it's going to be a lot less of a headache than having an issue or a security breach. Number five is using reputable antivirus and anti-malware software. Doing your research on this is really important, making sure that you're talking to trusted advisors about this, what's going to work best for you. Things like having a remote team, or a computer lab, or working with sensitive data like healthcare information or financial information. All of those things need to go into the consideration of your antivirus and anti-malware software. Um, and so these really help protect and prevent and remove malicious software like viruses, ransomware, spyware. Oftentimes they will detect it. These phishing emails, phishing, not phishing like for catfish, but phishing PH. It's those weird emails you get. I know my team's gotten a lot of emails that look like they're from me, and they are absolutely not. And as soon as you click that link, it side loads something onto your machine, which can really can integrate itself fully into your systems. And having antivirus or anti-malware on your devices will detect those things. Even in like emails and stuff, there's links or there are services that you can put in place that will actually scan emails and stuff like that beforehand, which is another form of antivirus or anti-malware. Again, this is the same thing. Ensure it's always up to date. Make sure that it's updating automatically, that it's configured to perform regular scans. And that will really help your organization, regardless of how big your IT team is, if you have one, really prevent issues going forward.
All right. And so tip number 6 is to manage app permissions and conduct software audits. So when managing app permissions, apps, many of you have seen this when you download a new app or open it for the first time in a while, and it pops up with a little pop-up that asks access to your camera or your microphone or your location, your contacts. And a lot of the times, like you might have your, your app that's really unrelated, that's asking, like you might be playing, I don't know, your game on your phone and it's asking for access to your contacts and that feels weird, or it's asking for your location and it doesn't feel relevant. So just make sure that you're paying attention when those pop-ups come up. A lot of the time they're designed so that you're just kind of clicking through. You're not really thinking about what it's asking you, but it's important to just pause and think about what permissions is it requesting and is that necessary. So for example, if I have my Zoom webinar feature on my computer and it pops up and asks for access to my microphone and my camera, obviously that makes sense. But just making sure that you're paying attention to what it's asking, and then obviously like going back and reviewing that from time to time. This is both, I think, in our professional and personal lives, this is relevant. And if you go into your phone settings and look at what apps have access to your location or your microphone, sometimes you'll be really surprised at how many things are running in the background that are always kind of tracking location and things like that. And then also, it's important to uninstall apps that you no longer use. Maybe your organization was using one app for something, for maybe it's like your HR software app or something, and then you switched companies and you still have that other app on there. It doesn't need to be on there anymore if you're not using it. So make sure that you're uninstalling any apps that you no longer use. And if you're in an administrative position, make sure that you're also revoking permissions that are not strictly necessary as well. And this also minimizes the data that apps can collect about you and your organization, which safeguards your privacy. And again, also set policies and standards for the frequency for staff to provide app permissions. I think, it can be a hard thing to remember, especially when we have so many different like apps for so many different functions and everything. And it's just really important that we're going through and revising kind of what we still have installed on our devices and everything. So setting those policies can really help guide staff to be able to make time for that as well. Passwords and device locking. So I feel like strong passwords is kind of also might feel like an obvious one, but it is really important. It's important to have strong passwords that are not, your cat's name that somebody can find out from your Instagram account, and then like your favorite number, things that people can guess. But it's also great to use, for example, password managers are a really good way to remember lots of passwords, especially like I know for work I have, probably 20 different passwords for all the different things that I'm logging into all the time. But I don't repeat those passwords because if there's a data breach for one company, that it might be at no fault of your own, but that company's data gets breached or something gets hacked, I don't want the rest of my passwords to get compromised because of that. So I highly recommend using password managers. If it's something that your organization has the budget for, it's great to provide that for your employees as a way to kind of ensure that best practices are being used and being able to remember all those different passwords. It's also important to enable remote wipe and tracking features on devices. So most, you can have administrative software that enables you to do that. But that way you can remotely erase your data if a device is lost or stolen, which prevents the sensitive information from falling into the wrong hands. This also enables you to reset passwords when your employees forget the really strong passwords that they set. You can go ahead in the back end and reset it so that you're not completely locked out of the device for a while. And then organization leaders or IT should also use software to enforce password use on devices and also regular password changes. This is really important and also in practice one of the most annoying things, but it's really good. It's always like when I have the most important meeting and then all of a sudden I get all the pop-ups. It's like it's time to change your password and then you don't have access until you change it. But it is a really good practice just so that the longer a password exists, the easier it is for somebody to gain access to that password and then access your account. So it's important to change passwords about every 90 days. And then tip number 8 is using a VPN. So a VPN is a virtual private network, which is a tool that creates a secure encrypted tunnel for your internet traffic. It hides your real IP address and your location. and it prevents hackers and internet service providers and advertisers from easily seeing what you're doing online. This is a really, really great way to ensure additional kind of privacy. It's especially important if you are doing work out in the field, or if you're doing outreach in the community or other public spaces where you're connecting to Wi-Fi. Say that you're meeting your clients at a public library or local McDonald's or something, for example, and you're connecting to their Wi-Fi to be able to do those services. It's really important that you're using a VPN, because every time that you're logging into an unsecure Wi-Fi network, it can be really a lot easier to get into your device. So using a VPN can provide that protection. And then also, it's really important to securely dispose of old devices. So when you're upgrading or disposing of old devices, when you're doing a refresh for your staff with their laptops or their smartphones, you can't just delete the files and then, donate or throw away the computer or whatnot. The data can often be recovered and erased from those drives. So it's important that you're securely deleting all of that. And the way to do that would be to use a professional data wiping software or service to securely erase all data before donating, selling, or recycling devices. For extremely sensitive data, physical destruction of the hard drive might be necessary to ensure information cannot be retrieved. So just think about all of the client data that you're working with. That's really important for us to be able to kind of know who we're serving and the ways that we're reaching the community. But a lot of that data can also be really really vulnerable in the ways that it's you might have clients' addresses and clients gender identity and things like that can be really sensitive data. So it's really important that you're erasing that from the devices when you switch devices.
I know you all see us laughing over here. It's because the team is required to change passwords every 90 days, and it is always at the most inconvenient time. Um, but those are all really good, important tips and ones we use here at LGBT Tech. For browsers and security extensions, this is another important one. Another one that I don't think we think about enough. So your web browser, whatever it may be, is the primary way that you get online and get access to everything. So making sure that piece of software is up to the highest level of standards is extremely important. And it's becoming increasingly more important because for many years we've had kind of a standard of them. We've had Mozilla, we've had Firefox, DuckDuckGo, Google Chrome. We've had those. But now as AI, and we're going to get into AI a little bit more, but as AI is becoming more and more available and moving faster and faster, a lot of these companies are also launching browsers. And so it's important to make sure that you understand the ins and outs of them, that you do your research. They have write-ups on every single one of them. And so making sure that you know how your data is being used, what your data is being used for, making sure that it's not being used to train models, or that you have, anti-tracking software in place. So like DuckDuckGo or Mozilla is really famous for their privacy, as well as Apple Safari is really famous for their privacy and anti-tracking components. It's also important to make sure, again, this is another piece of software that you may not necessarily think about all the time about updating, but there are security flaws in these as well that are exploited. And so it's important to make sure that those browsers, your main access to the internet, is continuously updated and on an automatic update schedule. Also checking your cookies. And if we don't have time today to go into cookies, but if you just search up, how do I clear my cookies or how do I see what cookies? Essentially what that is whenever you're going onto a website now, because of GDPR in Europe, the law governing internet access over there, as well as some in the United States, you have a lot of these, like you have to accept all or reject all tracking or what have you. That is actually cookies that it's tracking how you're moving around the website. It's helpful analytics for those running websites. And I'm sure if as an organization, there may be analytics that you're looking at. Those are the cookies. If you're seeing analytics on your website for your organization, the way that it sees those analytics is through the cookies. So as a user or as an organization that has users, it's really important to make sure that you're looking at those cookies, that you're clearing your cookies on a regular schedule, which is really easy. You can look up how to do it in your particular browser, but just set a reminder once a month. Go clear your cookies. The annoying thing about clearing cookies, though, is that if you have, password saved or whatever for like, I don't know, getting on a particular website, it will erase those because it no longer recognizes who you are coming to that website. But it is really important because how many websites are we logging onto every single day? And so making sure that things are not tracking you on a continuous basis is important. Extensions. We all probably have extensions for one thing or another that we install. Password managers, for example. It's really important to know that when you're installing those extensions that they're coming from a reputable, trusted place. A lot of I know Google Chrome and some of these other browsers have stores where you can go get those. That's a good first step, is if it's on the store, there's probably some sort of vetting that has happened, but it's not foolproof. And it's really easy to have a company not go through those official channels and still be able to install browser or extensions onto a browser. And so making sure that you know where that extension is coming from, it's something that you trust, it's something that you're using, and regularly reviewing those is extremely important because it's almost like side loading is kind of a word where you're kind of sidestepping your security protocol within your browser. If you install something on there that is not reputable, that has not been checked, there could be lines of code in there that are watching everything that you're doing or everything that your team is doing. So it's really important to make sure you're talking through that and not installing extensions that you don't know. I already talked about kind of some of the privacy focused browsers, so Mozilla or DuckDuckGo or some of those. So make sure you know what you're looking for and what protections you want, and that you're having conversations internally with your team about what browsers to use, and what the ramifications of those are. Um, I kind of talked a little bit about extensions. There's high risk extensions, and Kristen kind of touched on this before. If they're asking for access to certain things that seem like, why do you need access to that? Why all of a sudden do you need access to a calendar that needs access to my browsing history? That would be a warning sign, and you should dig into that a little bit further before just blowing through it and granting it. We've gotten into such a habit as a society of just like accept, 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 because for so long it was this long legal jargon. Um, Companies are getting better-ish at providing a little bit more explanation that is understandable and not legal jargon. But also, if you're unsure, you can search. You can do a quick search, on your browser. What does this extension do? Why is it asking for access to that? There's information out there about it, sometimes maybe with the company. Also, Reddit has an amazing, very active cyber safety aware community. And so I often will get information from actual users who have looked into these, who may have more experience than you or I. Some best practices for installing extensions. Like I said, install from an only official browser, review those permissions carefully, regularly audit them, monitor for those suspicious behaviors. If there's like pop-ups or redirects, or if your internet browser is really lagging, those could be, potential issues. Uninstall some of those extensions, clear your cookies. If it doesn't clear up, really dig into what those extensions are. We're going to get into kind of our last section here before we move into questions. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, if you have questions about what we've talked about so far, or maybe something we haven't talked about, please be sure to drop it into the Q&A here, and we'll be happy to jump into those in just a few minutes. All right. Everybody's favorite, or maybe not favorite term, AI. It's here, it's coming. Regardless of how you feel about it, it's being used everywhere. And so we wanted to touch on this for, in a couple different ways. We're not going in depth here. We're just kind of talking at very high level. Um, Later on, we'll have some additional webinars that will be going through this in more detail. So first and foremost, security and privacy has to be first and foremost at all times. No sensitive data should be shared within AI systems. For our particular team, any AI that is used, it has to be a paid service, one that we've vetted, and that we know that the information being put into it is not being used to train models, the larger models. Essentially meaning it's like a silo or like a grain silo. It is tied to our organization, it's within our team, it's paid, and we vetted that from the start. But even in those highly siloed systems where it's not sharing data, putting things like client data, personally identifiable information, confidential organization, financials, into maybe like AI chatbots, that is not a good idea. You don't know where that's going to go. It's going to go into the algorithm. It's going to go into the large language model, and could potentially pop up in some other place. And so you want to be very careful about how and what information you're putting in it. Basically assume that if you're typing it into AI, especially public AI tool, meaning that it's not paid, it's not secured to your organization, it could potentially be used to train the model, and it could potentially become public information. Um, Review provider policies. If you're considering an AI service, meticulously review their data privacy standards and security policies. If you don't know, you can search, you can phone someone who does know, you can look online, try to find some chat forums, but also you can reach out to us. I've responded to several AI issues and questions over the past year, and we are working at continuing to provide more information to you all. So your questions are also really important to us because they point to information that you may not know, or you may not know, and other organizations may not know. So it really helps us continue to put out tools and resources that are very useful for all of you. For handling any type of sensitive information, so local or enterprise solutions. So you've got, a lot of people are using Microsoft Teams or, Google Workspace or another one of those. There are AI tools built into those that are designed for that level of security. They're designed to be run on-premise or on cloud that is secure. There are also on-premise systems. If you're a large organizations, those can be very expensive to run as a smaller organization. But the strongest one is a localized system. But we can dive into that a little bit more. I can answer questions about that if it comes up. Develop an internal AI usage policy. It's really important that you establish clear guidelines for your staff, your volunteers, your board, anybody that has access into your systems, an email address, any of that, on how AI tools can and cannot be used within the organization, covering things like privacy, what data information should be there, acceptable use, and review process. AI is a tool, just like searching for something online. It is not a human replacement. We're not there yet. We shouldn't be there ever. We should really be thinking about it as a tool to help us as organizations move faster. Again, I'm not anti-AI. We need to really make sure that we're using it right. We as an organization, as LGBT Tech, are working to make sure that our information, we're working with these companies and talking to people making laws about how to make sure that we're counted, but how to make sure we're counted safely. We still have a long way to go. So just be really careful about how you're doing that. Make sure you're working with your team and being really thoughtful about how you're deploying these things.
It's also really important that if your center is using AI, that your staff is aware of ways to use it effectively in terms of making sure that the output is what you're looking for. So a really important part of this is providing good context, so prompt engineering. So it's not enough to say, for example, that if you're using AI to help you with a grant application, that you can't just be like, fill out this grant application. You need to give it enough information. And again, being careful about the sensitive information that you're providing. Go back and fill that in later. But it's important that you are giving it enough context and information that you're able to get responses that are real and don't just kind of sound nice, but don't really say anything. So the quality of AI output is directly proportional to the quality of the way that you prompt it. So be specific, clearly define what are your goals, your target audience, your desired tone, and the format of what you're looking for. And also provide that background context. So give the AI all the necessary background information or constraints. So for example, write a social media post for our center's youth program. The tone should be welcoming and inclusive, targeting LGBTQ plus teens, highlight our new virtual support group starting next month, and include the details that it's Tuesday at 6 p.m., focusing on coping skills, etc. Many of you have probably seen, if you've interacted with AI, that it does have the ability to hallucinate. So if you don't provide that information, a lot of the times it will just go fill in the information itself. So if you don't tell it that, make sure to include the information that the support group is Tuesdays at 6 p.m., they might be saying this is happening Saturday at 3 a.m. Like it'll just sometimes fill in that information. So making sure that you're being thorough while also providing appropriate information to your prompt. And also define the role. So tell the AI what role it should play. So for example, act as a grant writer for an LGBTQ organization, or you're a communication specialist for a nonprofit, or you're the editor for this document, just looking for a second opinion to maybe change the tone to make it sound a little bit more friendly or a little bit more professional. And also make sure that you iterate. So if the first output doesn't seem right, you can refine your prompt to have a better second output. It's also important to ask follow-up questions or provide examples of what you don't want. So if it's giving you something that's not helpful, you can give it that feedback also. It's also really important. I think this is one of the most important things, is double checking and verifying all AI output. So making sure that there's always a human in the loop. A lot of the ways that folks can tend to sometimes lean on AI is that kind of allowing it to do your work for you and stuff. And the ways it's being marketed is really promoting that. But it's really, really important that that you're double, triple checking everything that it's outputting. As I mentioned, it can always hallucinate or provide outdated information. It's pulling information from, all different places that it's been trained. So it can dig up old information that's outdated about your organization that was once posted on the internet, for example. That might not be what you're trying to communicate anymore. And you have to fact check everything that it puts out. I don't know how many of you have used Google recently with the AI feature, and it comes up with a list of answers, and then you click into the links that it's citing, and it's kind of this weird source that it's pulled that wouldn't necessarily be a source you would use otherwise. So making sure that you're always fact checking and checking its sources. Also, you can ask it to cite its sources as well. I'll be aware though that AI can sometimes invent sources or cite ones that have nothing to do with what you're working on. For nuance and tone, it's also important to review the output for the appropriate tone for cultural sensitivity and alignment with your center's mission and values. Nobody knows that better than you do and your staff does. So don't rely on AI. Sometimes it can come out sounding really professional or good, but making sure that you're still adjusting the tone to make sense to your organization and your audience. And then also making sure that you're checking for bias. So make sure that you're looking for unintended biases, stereotypes, exclusionary language in the AI output, especially when you're generating content related to identity, health, or social issues. AI, large language models, is trained by what's out there on the internet. And many of us know that the internet can be a really scary place for LGBTQ people. And so a lot of the times it can be pulling from information that's kind of training it to be homophobic or transphobic or racist and these kinds of things. So it's really, really important that you're checking that that's not what's being communicated in what you're creating if you're using AI. And it's also really important along these lines to be a great AI editor. So again, make sure that you read and edit everything. A lot of the times, AI is best used when you're using it to kind of like clean stuff up or maybe change the tone a little bit, like again, make this sound a little bit more professional, or can you find any holes in this argument or things I should add? But if you're using AI to kind of generate, especially, it's really important to be a good AI editor. So, for example, if you are applying for a grant and you just kind of throw the prompt into the AI and let it come out with whatever, and then you submit that. First of all, there's going to be misinformation about what you're doing. It's not going to sound unique. It's going to sound kind of generic, honestly, for what AI sounds like. And the other thing to remember is that many organizations will use the same AI tools. So if the grant application that you submit was mostly written by AI, there's a really high likelihood that a lot of other applications that funder receives is going to sound exactly the same. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I promise you that happens. And we've seen it. And so it's really important that even if you're using AI to help you brainstorm or kind of draft some sections, that you're really editing it and adding your unique voice to it. And also just remember that while AI can be supportive in creating, helping you in your work, it's really important that your authentic voice and your values and the lived experiences of the community that you serve are still coming through, because that's what really makes your organization stand out. So AI does not have genuine empathy and experience that you and your staff do. So it's really important that you're kind of putting in place those guidelines for your staff when and if they will be using AI.
This technology is moving at an astronomical pace. And so that's why you're not hearing us say anything about, oh, you should check this out or what have you. We could spend half a day on talking about different services and what they do and how they work and all of that. And if that's of interest to you, let us know, because I don't know, I personally would love to do that with you all and talk through maybe some of the ways that we've seen it used. I think it can be an equalizer. It can be a tool that is used. Every business in the world is using it. The businesses or companies or organizations that fund you are using it. And so it is important for you to be educated. And I think that's really kind of the final piece, is staying informed and trained continuously. So this is along the lines of cyber resilience. It's not a one and done. It's not an install and forget it. It is a continuous learning curve, especially with this technology, because it is changing so rapidly. And so making sure that you understand it, and that can feel daunting, especially to uh, nonprofit leaders who are already overworked and under-resourced, and I understand all of that. But making a conscious effort, or having somebody on your team that maybe really enjoys learning about this stuff, have them spend 15 or 30 minutes a day just learning about something. Have them work to create presentations and inform your team. Have them test and kind of push through things and see where, where there may be issues as you're thinking about potentially using these things. It is super important to make sure that you're staying up with this technology. It's not going away. I know there's a whole host of issues with it, from, what's happening to the environment, to what data is being used, how is it potentially harming our community. I understand all that, and I hear that loud and clear, and it's something that we think about all the time. Even with all of that in mind, it's not going away. And it's important that us as a community, and us as some of the earliest adopters of technology, I'm talking about the LGBTQ community as a whole, we are early adopters of technology. Our research shows that, because it can be an equalizer. And so I want to make sure that our community is staying informed, trained, and up to date. And if there are things that you have questions on, things that are coming up, please come to us and ask. Like I said, it just helps us do a better job when you ask. And yeah, it's always great to hear from you.
I know we have just a few minutes and we have a few questions in the chat. Chris, I'm going to throw this one to you. How can you tell if your ISP and VPN are following best practices?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this one in the chat, and so I pulled up my notes here really quickly. So I'm gonna say this very quickly. One is, there are broadband facts and labels. Every broadband ISP has to have a facts and fact label. And that goes over their privacy policies, their network management policies, um, what their DNS behavior is, uh, talks about their customer equipment. So there's a lot of things that go into this evaluation, especially for ISPs. So it's really important to make sure that you're looking through that. And if you don't understand something, go ahead and search for it and see kind of what it is. There are some standards out there. So you have NIST standards, that is, kind of set, that's the National Institute of Science and Technology. They really set the standards when it comes to this stuff. And they have a lot of information on their website, that is really important and actually quite easy to understand and read. As far as VPNs is, making sure that they're, no logs of evidence of like where you've been, what you've been doing. They shouldn't be doing that. There's no reason for them to. Making sure you're using a trusted VPN. It's one area that we're looking at actually providing the service with LGBT Tech, but we're still digging into it. But because of the sake of time, I'm not going to dive into all of it because it gets quite complex, but be happy to follow up on this. And maybe the team here, let's go ahead and take that back as a potential explainer. And we can actually put together something that would make a little more sense than me trying to run through it in 2 minutes.
Great. And Kelsey Holmes asked a great question, that we mentioned software examples, but does LGBT Tech have a recommended list for various tools like browsers, search engines, password managers, etc.? And yeah, just feeling like a resource like that would be helpful for folks starting out that are not tech savvy. So we do have our Cyber Safety Guidebook. If you haven't already signed up to receive a copy, I'll share that information in a moment. The guidebook doesn't actually it has a few examples throughout of specific like companies and stuff, but for the most part, it's kind of providing guidelines on what to be looking for within a product. But we will be creating more resources that are kind of providing that guidance and maybe a little bit more specific recommendations. As you mentioned, we have to be careful about promoting anything because for us, we just want to make sure that centers have the knowledge that they need to be able to make those decisions. But definitely also keep an eye out because we will be sharing some more information there. As I mentioned earlier, too, TechSoup has some really great discounts for nonprofits around those products. And then we will be sharing this presentation with participants. Chris, we might have time really quick for one more question if you want to.
Yeah.
If there's that you want to.
Alma, I loved your question here. I think, oh wait, it just went away. Hold on, sorry. Um, so where to store passwords. I think, internally we use I think we have one that we mainly use, which is LastPass. I'm not endorsing it. We're not supported by them in any way, shape, or form. I've used it forever. The one thing I like about LastPass is we can actually share passwords with each other. So, sometimes there's multiple people that have access to a Instagram account or something like that. And if you're following best practices of changing the password on a continuous basis, it gets really annoying to like try to track those passwords. So I like a password manager that allows us to share internally so that when we do have to update a password, it automatically updates it with the person that shared. Is it always perfect? No, but it's better than the alternative, either having repeating passwords, sharing passwords over potentially open conversation spaces. So that's a really good way to go ahead and protect yourself, and one that we've liked for a while. I know there's a lot of other questions here. We can grab these questions and try to follow up, maybe with a sheet, but we'll try to follow up on some of these. But also, please feel free to use our contact form if you want to answer these questions, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, thank you all for being here today.
Yeah, and once again, if you all have ordered a copy of the guidebook, you will be receiving those soon. So we're really excited about that. If you have not received or ordered a copy of the guidebook, feel free to check out our guidebook order at poweronlgbt.org/guidebook, and you can order your copy. We will also be doing more of these training webinars, diving into different topics in the guidebook, as well as some additional deep dives that are not in the guidebook. So make sure to get on our mailing list if you're interested in attending more of these training webinars. And also, if you have additional questions, like Chris mentioned, feel free to reach out to us via our contact form. But thank you all so much for being here, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the Path Forward Summit.